The first time I saw Mother God, she lay in a blue sleeping bag, her face covered in glitter, her eyes missing. Someone had wrapped Christmas lights around her desiccated corpse, and now they strobed and twinkled merrily. Mother God is in stasis. A calm voice said from behind me. I turned, seeing Hope had followed me into the room. She was one of Mother God's most fanatical followers. She is taking all the poisons from the universe into her body. Soon, she will wake up and lead us towards ascension. You must hug Mother God, a deep male voice demanded. Through the shadows of the hallway, I saw Llama, a hulking mass of red hair and muscle. He held a pistol in one steady hand. She will take away your doubts and anxieties. I'm not hugging a goddamn corpse. I spat angrily, wondering how I kept getting into these bizarre situations. How come you guys didn't call a doctor when she was dying? What the hell is wrong with you people? Mother God is not dead, Llama screamed in an insane voice. How could God possibly die? Why would we call a 3-dimensional doctor anyway? Mother God is a 5-dimensional being. They wouldn't even know where to start. Hope said, her eyes wide and gleaming. Llama nodded in fanatical agreement. I wondered where the rest of them were. I looked around, trying to find a way out. I knew they had my 2-year-old son downstairs, playing with the other kids who lived at the compound. If you don't hug Mother God, you will be recycled into the Galactic Center, Llama said, pointing the pistol in the middle of my forehead. He wore a strange combination of a shawl and a poncho, the once colorful material now dull and fraying. I could smell the sage and wheat permeating his clothes. Llama looked at me with eyes the faded green color of swamp water. His long beard looked far greasier than the last time I had seen him, his skin sunken and gray. I turned, staring down at the mummified corpse. The papery flesh hung tightly to the grinning skull. The lips had been eaten away, showing yellowed, cracked teeth. The nose too had collapsed into the center of the face. 2 ragged sinus holes covered in dried yellowish pus and clotted blood marked the spot. The smell emanating from Mother God's desiccated body was sickening, a combination of cinnamon, feces, and rotting meat. Do it, Llama demanded, shoving the barrel of the pistol into the small of my back. A sharp, stabbing pain shot up my spine as I stumbled forward. Do it, Hope repeated in her droning, emotionless voice. I looked down at the corpse sprawled across the floor. Inhaling deeply, I held my breath and lowered myself down on my knees. Mother God's grinning, half-decayed skull almost looked like it was trying not to laugh. I held my breath so as to avoid inhaling the rank odors rising from the decomposing body. Hesitantly, I leaned forward, extending my trembling hands towards Mother God. I wrapped my arms around the sleeping bag, hugging the corpse tightly. I wanted to avoid releasing any more gas bubbles, as the entire room already smelled of infection and shit. Mother God's thin arms cracked like dry chicken bones. Black fluid dribbled from her mouth, reeking of sewerage and bacteria. I closed my eyes, trying not to vomit. Isn't it beautiful? Hope asked as I pushed myself up, wavering on my feet and trying not to puke. She stroked her long brown hair over and over, as if trying to calm herself down. Can't you feel all the love radiating off of her? She is the center of everything, the storehouse of compassion. I nodded, continuously swallowing all the saliva flooding my mouth to try to keep from retching in front of these insane fanatics. The smell of feces and rot seemed to have grown stronger in the room. I remembered the children on the floor below us and felt a rising sense of horror as I realized they had been living in this house with a corpse for weeks. I need to go check on Davy, I whispered, feeling my heart racing. Everything seemed unreal, as if I were trapped in a nightmare. Llama stood like a statue, the pistol pointed down by his side. His eyes were half closed, as if he were in some sort of stupor. Hope crept up behind him, putting her long fingers on his shoulder. Llama's eyes flew open as if he had just woken up. Davy is fine, he said in a robotic monotone. "Everything is fine. We are one." "We are one," Hope repeated excitedly. "All one." "Okay," I whispered slowly, looking between the two of them. "I'm going downstairs then." I took a step toward the door. A moment later, I heard the floorboards creaking. I glanced back, seeing Hope and Llama following closely behind me, whispering to each other in low, conspiratorial voices. Even in the sprawling living room downstairs, the cloying smell of dead flesh followed us. I saw Davy sleeping on a beanbag next to a little girl, looking as peaceful as a tiny angel. "Did you guys see Mother God?" another girl named Aurora asked. She was laying on the couch next to a smoking glass bong. "She is still in stasis," Hope answered grimly, her eyes sad and downcast. "She has not yet awoken to lead us into ascension." Aurora sat up, flicking a lighter and filling up the bong with thick gray smoke. The skunky smell did nothing to cover up the reek of decaying meat, however. It seemed to combine with it into something even more nauseating and sickening than before. I had not come here for no reason, though I now regretted bringing Davy. My brother Lee had been missing for nearly a month. The last time I heard from him, he told me about making new friends in this laid-back compound where everyone ate mushrooms and talked about spirituality all the time. Then his phone shut off, and he seemed to just disappear. I wasn't too worried, to be honest, as Lee was a full-grown man and could take care of himself. But after 5 weeks, my mother and father begged me to try to find him and make sure he was okay. Now that I was here, I wasn't confident that he was. I wondered how to bring up the subject to these nutjobs. "Hey, you guys aren't holding prisoners in the basement like some kind of Gary Haytnick horror house, are you?" "I'm sorry, I'm being rude," Aurora said, turning her dark eyes to me. Like Hope, her face was caked in far too much makeup and had a somewhat blocky, unattractive quality. Her nose was just slightly too big, her forehead too high, her cheekbones too bony. Other than Aurora's hair, which was dyed pink and black, she might have been twins with Hope. She raised the bong to me. "You said you're friends with Lee, right? Do you want a hit?" I waved my hand in front of my chest. "No, I'm good," I said. "Actually, Lee's my brother. He dropped off the map a few weeks ago, and my parents just wanted to make sure he wasn't dead in a ditch somewhere." I didn't realize it at that moment, but things were about to get a lot stranger than they already were in the compound. I heard a shrill keening rising in volume. It sounded like the cries of a panicked, injured animal. It drew closer. My head ratcheted over to stare at the basement door, which flew open. A naked woman with frayed strands of thick rope still tied to her wrists exploded through the threshold. She looked scarecrow thin, and her pale white flesh covered in deep purple bruises and angry red gashes. "Help me!" she cried, staring directly at me. The rest of the room went deathly silent. I heard the cry of Davy and the other children as they woke up, surprised by the sudden screaming and slamming. "What are you doing out of the learning room?" Llama asked in a voice seething with psychopathic coldness. She screamed and tried pushing past Llama and Hope, heading toward the door. Hope fell backwards, her eyes wide and surprised as she smacked her head hard on the dirty carpet. Llama was much faster, however. He reached for his holstered pistol. It came out in a black blur. He fired only once, hitting the woman in the center of the forehead. A small, perfectly round entrance wound appeared like magic. Her head jerked back, her hands clenching into fists. Her naked, battered body fell backwards, as if in slow motion. She lay there bleeding and twitching on the floor, her fingernails and lips turning blue. I heard a lighter flick and saw Aurora nonchalantly filling up the massive, 4-foot-tall glass bong. Davy's small body stumbled across the room toward me, tears and snot streaming from his tiny pinched face. I ran toward him, picking him up and hugging him. I felt the warmth radiating off of him as his arms closed around my neck. Turning, I decided I needed to leave immediately. I started heading toward the door without a word. but Llama stepped in front of it, his emerald eyes flashing with excitement and pleasure. "And just where the fuck do you think you're going?" he asked, a Cheshire cat grin splitting his bearded face. He ran his fingers through his fire red hair, looking as calm and collected as a Buddha. "Don't you want to see your brother?" No, I think I'm good," I stuttered nervously. Llama put the hand with the pistol in it around my neck, leaning on me like an old friend. "He's here, you know," he whispered in a conspiratorial voice. "He wants to see you too." "We can't let you leave until you see Lee," Hope said from behind me. She had crept up on me, and her voice was only inches away. I saw her holding a long, serrated knife covered with dark crimson stains by her side. The handle looked sticky with gore. "Why did you kill that girl?" I whispered, feeling Davy's rapid heartbeat beating through his shirt. I cradled my son in my arms protectively, but I was surrounded on all sides, the only exit blocked. Llama shook his head, looking like a disappointed parent. "She tried to escape and tell others about us," he said. "The world is not ready for us yet. Mother God has not awoken. We try to be compassionate here. If anyone tries to escape, they go to the learning room, where they can be taught anew." "She was worthless anyway," Hope spat with hatred, prodding the still corpse of the naked woman with one shoe. "Always complaining about how much she missed her family. This is our family now, the intergalactic family of love." Her eyes shone with fanaticism. "Do you want to see the learning room?" Llama asked coldly. "Is Lee down there?" I said. Llama shrugged. "Why don't we go see for ourselves?" he asked in response, jamming the barrel of the pistol into my stomach. Davy's crying had quieted to a soft whimpering. Carrying my son in my hands, I turned and walked across the room towards the stairs to the basement. The steps looked dank and wet, flat slabs of concrete descending into a dark pit. Llama followed close behind me as our steps echoed off the grey walls. I was surprised at just how deep this building went. We went down at least a couple stories in the claustrophobic concrete tunnel. At the bottom, I beheld a nightmarish scene. A single, flickering, incandescent bulb overhead cast the dungeon in a dim light. A naked man was tied in the center of the room, his arms held straight up above his bowed head with knots of thick brown rope. Deep infected slashes ran across his back, the wounds suppurating and spreading in black patches. His entire body appeared like a road map of torture marks, bruises, and clotted pus. All around the concrete walls of the room, someone had glued thousands of dismembered eyeballs. Most of them looked like they came from animals, but not all. Many were no more than rotting drippings of vitreous fluid and gore, yet others looked fresh. The smell of septic shock and decomposition hung thick and rank in the air, and I realized that not all the fetid odors in the house had come from the corpse of Mother God. From a dark corner, a silhouette stepped forward. I saw the form of my brother, his dark eyes blazing. He looked totally unharmed. He gave me a crooked half-smile. "Lee? Holy shit, you're okay," I said, surprised. He nodded patiently. "Father God is in charge of the learning room," Llama said. I looked between him and Lee, confused. Then, the realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. "You're not being held prisoner here?" I asked, a rising sense of horror gripping my heart with a suffocating strength. Llama laughed at that, a sardonic low chuckle of mirth and sadism that echoed through the room. The torture victim stirred, raising his bloody head slowly. I saw one of his eyes had swollen shut. Blood dribbled from a purple lump the size of an orange. His other eye opened, looking watery and unfocused. "Help me," he whispered in a voice choked with pain. Lee stepped forward. In a flash, he struck out at the bound man, bringing a fist up into his jaw. I heard a crack of bone as a tooth flew out of his bloody, swollen mouth. "Stop it! What the hell are you doing?" I asked, still holding Davy in my arms. Davy hid his face into his chest, not looking at the torture and dismemberment surrounding us on all sides like a tomb. "He tried to sell us out to the men in black," Lee said, pointing an accusing finger at the naked man as he spat blood on the cold concrete floor. "We caught him talking to them." "What the hell are men in black?" I asked. Lee looked at me. "We don't really know. They keep showing up here in flashy, colorful cars. They always wear sunglasses to cover their bulging eyes. Sometimes they have extra fingers, and they're always long and twisted. They say they're from the US government, but they don't look like government agents to me. They wear garish ties and colorful hats that no CIA agent would be walking around in." Lee said grimly. "Since Mother God went into stasis, I've been leading the group. Before she fell asleep, we were interconnected souls." "We think the men in black are sent from the Illuminati," Lama said from behind me. The naked man just shook his head, fresh streams of scarlet dribbling down his chin. "I never talked," the man whispered. "Father God caught you red-handed," Lama screamed in fury. Lee looked like he would strike the man again, his dark eyes narrowing to slits. But at that moment, Hope ran down the cold concrete steps, waving her hands with manic energy. "They're back! They're at the front door, and they want to see you!" Hope cried, looking to Lee for guidance. Lee's face went pale, his eyes widening. The three of them ran upstairs, leaving me alone with the naked man in a room full of rotting eyeballs. "Arm yourselves!" I heard Lee screamed overhead, the words echoing down the cold steps. I glanced back at the naked man, who was hanging unconscious again, the weight of his body dragging painfully against his arms. The sound of shooting reverberated from upstairs in a deafening series of bangs. Someone started screaming in pain. "They're coming in!" I heard Lee yell, his voice tinged with a kind of fear I had never heard there before. I ran upstairs, taking the cement steps 2 at a time, eager to get out of the learning room and out of this house of such madness. I slammed through the door, sending it smacking against the wall with a clatter. The smell of blood and gun smoke hung thick in the air, mixing with the omnipresent odor of death that permeated the house. Aurora was laying sprawled in front of the threshold, half of her face blown away and charred to a smoking heap of burnt flesh. It didn't look like the work of any bullet. A spreading puddle of blood wreathed her head like a halo. Lama lay in the corner, half of his chest blackened and exposed. His face was a mask of sweat. His clothes had melted to his skin, his white, unbelieving eyes. He gurgled, rasping and suffocating. The smell of cooked human flesh and burned hair hung thick in the air. I thought I could see his heart beating through the blackened gore of his torso. The rest of the cultists lay dead or dying. I saw the children gather together in a corner, hugging each other, their faces pale, their cries mixed with the gurgling of the dying. The front door stood wide open, letting the bright light stream in from the dirt parking lot. Silhouetted in the center of this effulgence stood the silhouette of a tall man in a suit. I felt like I couldn't focus on him, as if the lights grew brighter if I tried to look in that direction. He stopped into the room, causing his features to come into focus. It seemed the spell had broken as quickly as it had started. 2 more men in black suits followed him a moment later. At first glance, they seemed normal enough. From a distance anyways. And yet, my horror grew as I stared closely at the newcomers. Their faces looked as smooth and perfect as a glass pane. They each had a pair of extensive, black sunglasses. All of the hair on their bodies appeared to be missing, even their eyebrows. They all wore brightly colored, garish ties and undershirts that didn't match their black suits at all. They had no lips. Instead, they looked like they had drawn a crude facsimile of them with blood-red lipstick. Their fingers were long and twisted, looking as if they had far too many joints, each tapered into points. I realized with increasing unease that they had no fingernails, no lines on their palms. Like their faces, their hands almost looked as if they were made of white marble, free from all lines and imperfections, gleaming with an inhuman smoothness. The man in the front removed his sunglasses. I saw his eyes were alien, monstrous things. They bulged from their sockets, the membranes looking as tight as a snare drum and ready to burst. Long-slitted black pupils ringed by irises, the sickly yellow of a suppurating wound, stared out at me. "Are you with these humans?" he hissed in a low voice that seemed to split and distort. "Are you a follower of the one they call Mother God?" "No, we're innocent," I pleaded. "I have no idea what's going on here." Davy wailed in my arms, his small face pinched with terror. The man in black put a long gnarled finger on Davy's forehead. The boy instantly went silent, his eyes suddenly taking on a faraway glazed look. "That is certainly fortuitous," their leader gurgled. "For Mother God was a thief, stealing our secrets. Thankfully, most humans will regard her as insane and rambling. But we can never be too careful, can we? Not with secrets." The S sound of the last word dragged on until it exploded into a reptilian hissing. I realized all three of the men in black had their smooth, marble white jaws hanging open. Serpentine tongues flicked out as they hissed in unison. I backpedaled away in terror, seeing the back door of the cabin standing open. The corpses of the cultists littered the floor all around me, puddles of blood spreading under their slowly cooling bodies. In the corner, Llama still twitched, his bloody face a mask of confusion and agony. "I'm not involved in this," I said to the leader, hugging my son tightly. "I didn't shoot at you guys when you came in. I just came here to check on someone. But he's dead now, so..." "You are involved," the leader said. "You've seen too much." He had a small toy-like ray gun by his side. It looked like it was made out of some gleaming silvery material that constantly shone with an inner light. "Put the child down in the corner with the others," he demanded. I just shook my head. "We will not harm the children. These are too young to speak or understand anyway." The two men in black behind the leader stepped forward, raising their small toy-like guns at me. I trembled inwardly. The leader came forward, looking as if he would rip Davy right out of my arms. At that moment, chaos broke out. I saw a blur of sudden movement from the corner. Llama's dying glazed eyes glittered with an ineffable surge of joy and fanaticism. Crawling forward towards the man in black, I saw he had a pistol in one trembling hand. I tried not to look, staring into the leader's reptilian eyes instead. Okay, I said slowly, pretending to put Davy down. At that moment, a series of gunshots rang out, deafening in the enclosed room. The men in black all spun towards Llama, seeing his mutilated, bleeding form only 9 or 10 feet away. Llama's bullets hit the leader in the neck, causing a waterfall of blood to surge down the leader's garish clothing. But it wasn't any sort of blood I had ever seen before. It was as pale and white as the man in black's skin, filled with what looked like tiny pieces of opalescent glitter. The other two instantly responded by firing their alien pistols back at Llama, sending orbs of cyclonic fire ripping through the air with the smell of ozone and smoke. I took the opportunity to flee towards the back door. The sounds of the gunshots and the eerie keening of the fireballs followed me all the way to my car. Parked next to me was the car the men in black had come in, a garish, bright orange VW Bug with federal plates on it. I flung open the door to my car, quickly put Davy in the passenger seat, and rummaged in the glove box for my knife. I heard it click open. The house had gone silent by now. Knowing I was out of time, I ran toward the VW Bug, stabbing at the two tires on the driver's side. I heard the hissing of air as they quickly started deflating. I hopped in my car, hearing the door slam open behind me. Two of the men in black ran out, shooting balls of fire at my car. I heard one ping loudly against the truck, sending the car fishtailing wildly. Davy screamed in terror, certainly traumatized by this horrid experience. After nearly crashing, I managed to right the car, putting the accelerator down as far as it would go. I fled that place of nightmares, seeing balls of fire smashing the trees all around me. As I went,